Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Dark Verse. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto and Hinata return his village and live in relationship part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Looking at the mirror, she brushed her hair straight, making sure that there's no stray strand anywhere. Before leaving her room, she double-checked herself, taking note that her uniform was properly worn and without any sign of a wrinkle. She headed downstairs at the right time, courteously greeted everyone in their household and proceeded to eating breakfast. As scheduled, she headed out of her home with her bike in tow, traveling on the way to school. Konoha Prefecture was quite the quaint sight amidst development. It's famous for its wooden-made manners, shrines and cultural festivities aside from its city center. Typically, she enjoyed the beauty of low-rise houses and its harmonious blend with nature as she passed by on her way to school. Most of the time, some of the taiyaki vendors from the shops nearing the shrines would greet her too. That's the normal morning routine for a Hyuga Hinata. The Hyugas were known for having a strong traditional family image, thus Hinata was honed to act in such fashion. Their family is also a household name at the public office for being a family of lawyers, hence Hinata was expected to be kempt and picture perfect. Above it all, she was burdened with the heavy expectation to carry out the family's name in the line of their career as lawyers, lawmakers and politicians. But she didn't have it in her. It had been years since she was at the receiving end of her father's cold resentment. She couldn't be perfect enough. Disappointingly, she couldn't be the top one of the batch. It was not that she wasn't smart and athletic. It's just that she couldn't be number one. She'd rather have Ino-chan and Sakura-chan battle out for that golden spot in the female division. As for her, at least, she didn't fall behind number two. At the end of the day, all she could give her father was the clean deportment record, which no student in Konoha Gakuen could even achieve. That made her the class president, though. But even that could not even make her father proud. Call her the black sheep of her family, but she could not stand the heated confrontations and the blazing egos. She witnessed how politics did their family dirty, especially her Neji Nisan, and she could not just bear it. In speaking of her Nisan, he must had gone to school early again to attend a council meeting. Her Neji Nisan's a natural leader and a genius. He had a reformist mindset and vowed to improve Konoha Prefecture's system in the future. As the council president, he had transformed the school positively and proved himself as an effective leader. Hinata latched her bike as soon as she reached school. Konoha Gakuen was an institution for privileged students. Its faculty members were the cream of the crop, just like its pupils. Hinata went to the lockers to change shoes. Quietly, she went upstairs and inside her classroom. As usual, she headed straight to her seat without earning anyone else's attention. Well, that's her being Hinata. It was a plus that her seat was at the very back and next to the window, as she loved observing the skies and her classmates too. Shino-kun was either at the science lab or at the greenhouse because he's fond of entomology. Kiba-kun was always at the running track with his dog, Akamaru. Although pets weren't actually allowed, he was given exemption as he was part of the track and field team. They always shared the field with the soccer superstar, Rock Lee-kun. He was their senior and a peer of her Neji Nisan. Choji-kun was the future sous chef and dreamed of having his own cooking show. He usually spent his spare time at the cafeteria, but right now he was at his desk munching his chips while he talked to the other boys. Ino-chan and Sakura-chan were always together. They were both best friends and rivals at everything. Both wanted to be doctors, though it seemed Sakura-chan was more serious about it than Ino-chan. Hinata always pondered that Ino-chan had more interest in following her parents' footsteps in interrogation. Sometimes they would talk to her about girl stuff she was really embarrassed to talk about, and Hinata knew they were just being nice to her. Maybe they felt sorry for her being a loner. At the end of the day, their Haruno Sakura and Yamanaka Ino, the it girls, while she's simply Hyuga Hinata. Did her name even ring a bell? Oh yeah, everybody knew her. Well, that's because she's a Hyuga and that's all there was to that. Always quiet. Hinata. Kiba greeted as he sat in front of her. Kiba-kun. Hinata slightly nodded her head. Hinata and Kiba became friends because the Inuzuka adhered to his belief that he would befriend whoever his Akamaru would befriend, and it so happened that the canine had gained a special liking to Hinata. Well, technically you should call her Iancho because she's our class president, Kiba. Shino interjected. No such thing, Shino-kun. Hinata said faintly. To be honest, she had zero authority over the class. It was like she was there to collect papers, to photocopy handouts, basically run class errands, that's all. Fine. Kurenai-sensei is arriving, so get ready to tell the class, Iancho. I won't help you this time. Kiba said, proudly without any hint of teasing. He meant that to encourage Hinata. Kurenai-sensei entered the class and looked encouragingly at Hinata. Hinata stood up and looked around, but her classmates were still unaware and were busy doing their own thing. She was trembling and troubled until she inhaled deeply. Everyone, Kurenai-sensei is already here. Still, it looked as if only Kiba-kun and Shino-kun were ready to heed her call. She gripped the hem of her skirt and raised her soft voice louder. Let's all stand up and greet, please. Hinata felt like drowning. Chairs moved, but only those of her friends and Choji-kuns. Loud chatting and bickering can still be heard in the background. Until, Uchiha Sasuke stood up and dry coughed. Girls in the class straightened up while the boys who were trying to outdo him got conscious and followed as well. They greeted Kurenai-sensei and the class began. Hinata exhaled relief. She really didn't know why she was still in this position. She glanced at Sasuke-kun. He was seated in front, so she couldn't really say much about him, but he was really like her Neji Nisan sometimes. He talked to Hinata once, because he wanted her seat. You know, the very back and beside the window, perfect spot to daydream and contemplate. But their P.E. teacher and baseball coach, Kakashi-sensei, transferred him in front on purpose, much to Sasuke's dismay. Hinata looked at her seatmate, Nara Shikamaru. He was sleeping as always. Shikamaru-kun was also a known prodigy and a champion shogi player, but he was laid back. He was the reason why Hinata was made the class president. As the class representative, one must have a clean record, and only the both of them had that. The position was supposed to be his in the first place, but the role went to Hinata when Shikamaru skipped a class with Naruto-kun. Her heart started racing with thoughts of Naruto-kun. It's too bad he was not in the first class again, but it was like he had an immunity in all kinds of offense in the school. Technically, she first got acquainted with Naruto-kun during middle school. He was as confident as ever. He had occasional fights with the neighboring gangs here and there, as he believed he'd have enough influence when he became a Yakuza leader. Nevertheless, Naruto-kun specifically enjoyed going against Sasuke-kun, especially during baseball games. However, after they graduated from middle school, Naruto-kun had to leave due to his godfather's work. Now, he just returned a few months ago, just when they were in their final year in high school. The bell rang, hinting that it's lunchtime. How she spent the class drifting away in the clouds. Hinata zipped close her bag and proceeded upstairs. It was lunchtime and it was her routine to eat alone at the rooftop of their school. There, she could see everything. She loved observing. Come to think of it, she always had keen observations. She loved watching the events unfold before her, and somehow, she preferred life to be that way. She's just a simple flower sitting under the sky waiting for life to happen. It's not like she had control over where the winds would take her or whether how much sunlight would reach her. She had no total control of her life. She wouldn't know if she would be picked up to be given to a loved one or she would be blown away somewhere unknown. She wouldn't know if she'd serve a purpose. She's just a simple flower. That's why she admired and liked Naruto-kun. He had a dream, Even if sounded silly right now, at least he wanted something for himself, while Hinata felt unmovable. Hinata sat down and ate her meal in silence. Her lunchtime was typically like this as well, and she was used to this. Her other classmates were out with their buddies, but she's Hyuga Hinata. Nobody could have even noticed her exit the classroom. She sighed and smiled. She'd prefer life to be this simple anyway. She looked up at the sky and watched as the clouds moved slowly. For years, she watched Naruto-kun from afar. He fought with gangs after gangs, announcing his dream to be a Yakuza leader in order to be powerful enough, but Hinata knew that they were still young. His dream to become as powerful as a gang leader was just to prove himself, and Hinata knew that as they grow up, he'd find other ways to show his brightest potentials. There's no special day when she actually first laid eyes on Naruto-kun. He just happened in her life. There was no moment of him saving her just for her to admire him, to like him and fall in love with him at an instant. It all happened through a course of time. She simply envied him. He had something she didn't, and she aimed to be somehow like him someday in her own way. As time took, Naruto-kun became dear to her. He was her inspiration. Then, he became a part of her before she even knew it. Her feeling for him got even stronger upon his return. He had been helping her, especially when she was assigned as the class representative. He must really feel sorry for her, that's why. But now's their last year in high school and probably the last time she'd see Naruto-kun. The most perfect time for her to, at least, let him know how she really felt. But maybe she'd just do it during graduation. Hinata sighed and continued eating. She really had to think things through. The class went on as usual, however the teacher had to go earlier than the expected time because of the surprise, scheduled inspection of the student council that only the faculty and the council knew of. Thus, she assigned Hinata to collect the seatwork once done and you, just hand out your papers to me before going downstairs, everyone. Hinata said with her soft voice, but no one paid attention. Until the classroom's front door blasted. Their classmate entered the room. His spiky blonde hair was tousled in its usual way, he had a band wrapped around his forehead, he wore a string for a belt, the first few buttons of his white shirt were open and his black school coat was longer than it's supposed to be. Uzumaki Naruto. Wow. Too early for our class tomorrow, huh, Naruto? Kiba teased as he welcomed his friend. No, I'm actually early for our game later. Naruto answered happily as he threw his bag on his seat and started bantering with Kiba. The class soon recovered at the arrival of their odd classmate, and Hinata started again. Upon seeing that they must go down at the grounds by the time, everyone, please hand me your seatwork before going downstairs. Thank you. She looked around and her other classmates were on their own business, either chatting, sleeping or tinkering on their phones. Hinata sighed and smiled to herself. Guess, she had to approach her classmates one by one to get their papers. Didn't you hear the class rep? Hand her the papers before going down. Naruto announced with his loud voice that prompted the whole class. Alarmed, the others became aware of the time and passed their papers to Hinata. Naruto blocked the doorway when Sasuke was about to go. He halted and the raven-haired boy looked at him sharply. Your paper. Naruto dared. It's with her before you even called out for it. Sasuke lightly moved him away. Why are you being specific with Sasuke-kun, you knucklehead? Sakura confronted as she came behind Sasuke. You don't have to defend that bastard just to get my attention, Sakura-chan. Idiot. The pink-haired slapped him instead and moved out. Hinata counted all the papers and made sure they were complete. She had to be left alone in the classroom to assist the student council in inspecting her classmates' bags. Her Neji ni-san asked for her help about this, so she had to remain, but Naruto-kun was still with her. He went beside her and helped arrange the papers in alphabetical order. He was usually like this. He would help her in her errands as the class representative whenever he's around. Naruto-kun, Hinata hesitated, but she knew she had to continue. Your paper is, it's still not here. He just giggled and rubbed the back of his head. About that, she couldn't help but feel a little sad. Of course, she wanted Naruto-kun to have a bright future and she knew that studying would help him achieve that. But who was she in the first place to lecture him about these things? Sorry for making you sad, Aincho. Naruto-kun said as he sat on the table in front of her. And no, that's. Hinata paused and inhaled. She dipped her head low and fiddled her fingers on the papers. I just wanted Naruto-kun to have a bright future. Naruto didn't respond immediately, but after a brief moment, he managed to find a way to. Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Aincho. Hinata just smiled tentatively as she put the papers in her bag. Whoa, what's that bag? He asked astounded, pointing at Hinata's special bag. Oh, this is where I place all of my stuff for the class. The photocopying fees, the handouts to photocopy, the papers to submit and other stuff. Naruto just stared at her and smiled. There was a moment of silence in between them that the only thing they could hear were the voices of the students on the grounds and the ticking of the wall clock. Hinata was becoming conscious of their state of being alone together, causing her cheeks to blush. Naruto-kun, I think it's best if you. Oh yeah, at the grounds. I'm sorry about that, Aincho. Naruto-kun said as he hurriedly ran after the exit. I better go. And she forgot to thank him. Maybe she could buy him something this time as form of gratitude. Hinata, Neji ni-san called and with him were Tenten-chan and Rock Lee-kun. Like who would bring his entire supply of food in school. Tenten-chan said, as she checked one of Hinata's classmates' bags. Tenten-chan was obviously one of the student council members. She's tomboyish and loved martial arts just like Neji ni-san. Probably, Choji-kun. Hinata thought. There's a pillow as well. Rock Lee-kun announced. Shikamaru-kun. I can't believe this. Alive beetles in a bag. Shino-kun. Hinata went near the area where Naruto-kun was seated. Due to conflict of interest, she won't be checking his bag, but she'd like to know if he'd get into trouble. Her Neji ni-san went beside her and she knew for sure that he'd be the one to inspect Naruto-kun's belongings. Somehow, she was feeling nervous. Even if Naruto-kun was weirdly spared from all the school sanctions he must be having, her past experience was not as favorable. During middle school, when she and her Neji ni-san weren't close yet, Naruto-kun got into a fight with her ni-san. He broke rule after rule and the two battled out. It was a tough fight and Naruto-kun won. Hinata knew that her Neji ni-san won't engage in such petty battle with Naruto-kun anymore, yet she couldn't help but worry. She heard a deep exhale from beside her and saw it was from her ni-san. I guess, you got to take care of this one too. He handed out Naruto's bag to Hinata and swerved away to a different row. Hinata had no choice but to inspect it. Whatever she would discover, it meant she had to confiscate it. With shaky hands, she opened Naruto's bag. There was. Instantly, she turned her head away. A blush crawled across her cheeks. No way. She took heavy inhales and exhales. What would she do? Perhaps, she was just imagining things. She composed herself and swallowed. Opening the bag with gentleness, her hands trembled, and the bag fell, catching everybody's attention. The contents spilled, revealing everything. Oh no. Hinata panicked and placed everything inside but the thing. Not thinking properly, she slid it underneath her sailor uniform. Her face reddened further upon realizing where she exactly hid that thing. Avoiding everybody's gaze, she stood upright, hiding her face. Hinata knew that this was the moment that they're going to ask what happened. Sad news was, she was not good at lying. We're all called by the principal. She said she has some special announcement to make in this class. Hinata heard a student called out to her ni-san and his friends and she was saved by the bell. They bid the farewells and thanked Hinata, bringing along with them the things they confiscated. Now, She was alone and could contemplate on the next course of action. She understood that Naruto-kun was a teenage boy and this was part of growing up, but why on this day? Well, she could just let this slip, return the thing inside his bag and pretend like nothing happened. But that's against her integrity. Perhaps, she could talk this out with him after class. But it was awkward. She had never seen something like this before. Even her Ni-san was overprotective to her when it came to this stuff. She's sure as hell that he would ensue a fight with Naruto-kun once he knew that she saw something like this in his bag. Hinata cleared her throat and brought out the material from its awkward hiding place. A chair moved and she lifted her head sharply. Her eyes widened. Naruto-kun. His eyes were as wide, and his sight was heading down on her grip on the miraculous porn magazine. Hinata's hands shook and a loose page fell on the floor. There she saw something she must not see. She elicited a tiny gasp as Naruto panicked and grabbed the page. Duh. That's. The voices of their classmates started emerging and they both made their way to their own seats. Hinata couldn't contain the drumming inside of her head. She still had the thing with her. With haste, she placed it inside her bag before her classmates see it. She buried her face on her hands wishing that the earth would swallow her whole. What happened was just the most unexplainable moment of her life. And it didn't help that it happened with Naruto-kun. Like a robot, she moved like a robot. Their principal, Tsunade, came and they greeted her, but it was just a passing occurrence to her. She couldn't give it to Neji Ni-san, it would be war. He would get angry. He got angry at Kiba-kun once for the same reason, even though it was also by accident. But how could she face Naruto-kun after that? It might be simple for some, but she's Hyuga Hinata. Hyuga Hinata. And she's going to hand the person she loves a magazine with an open-legged woman on the font cover. Perhaps, she could just discard the magazine away for everyone's sake. This was not allowed anyway. But what if Naruto-kun confronted her about this? Yes, she'd just avoid him. That's right. She's Hyuga Hinata and she's good at not being seen. Hinata. She raised her head and realized it was their principal calling her. Yes, Tsunade-sensei. Hinata muttered. Ha, that's a yes. The class looked at her with disbelieving eyes. It was like she grew another eye on her forehead or something. That's not even a proper yes. Naruto-kun protested and his anger was visible, but he hesitated. He paused for a while and pulled himself to look at Hinata. Are you even sure, Aincho? I don't. She didn't even know what they're talking about. You're going to merit a deduction if Naruto would, Choji-kun worriedly whispered. You do care about Naruto, right, Hinata? Tsunade-sensei asked, making her blush, and she immediately fidgeted. I mean, as the class rep, you are concerned, aren't you? Well, even if not as a class rep, she's concerned about him. Why yes. I guess, that's a proper yes, for you. Their principal said and informed. So it's settled then, Hinata's going to be Naruto's personal remedial aide. The continuous wailing of his alarm clock forced him to wake up. Naruto was not ready yet. He still couldn't feel his limbs nor could he open his eyes. He was too damn tired, and he went home too late last night. Was he able to even get a good sleep? Did he even sleep, or did he just close his eyes? Ever since he came back to Konoha, things got a bit unexciting, unlike when he's traveling with his godfather for his so-called research. He dragged his body to stand up and headed towards his kitchen while rubbing his butt like a normal unkempt teenage boy that he was. He opened his fridge and realized that all that he got was spoiled milk. Good thing he had cup ramen with him. Heading down, Naruto was tying the rope around his waist. Belt was just an expensive addition he could not purchase. Around his head was a band. It was nonsense, but he thought it was cool. His black jacket was longer than usual, was open just like the first buttons of his white dress shirt underneath. Without looking back, he rode his bike on the way to school. And oh, come on. He didn't even mind checking if he locked the door to his apartment. What would a thief steal from his room anyway? The vendors near the shrine sighed at the sight of him, while the more conservative neighbors gazed with judgmental eyes. Naruto was used to this kind of treatment. His aura spelled trouble and seemed that their little town in Konoha Prefecture knew his every triumph over gangs from neighboring towns. But these folks knew too little. He wasn't just fighting those assholes for popularity and glory. There's something else. All Naruto could do was sneer from within. They didn't know who he really was. Well, what he can say, this was the typical for Uzumaki Naruto. And we're just starting yet. Konoha Gakuen was a whole lot of story on its own. That school was something Naruto was not excited about. Everything about it was boring. Well, except their baseball sessions every afternoon. His friends with several boys in their class, especially with the lazy one, Shikamaru and the hungry Choji. Recently, he also seemed to enjoy the company of Kiba. But there's one guy, one hell of a guy, whose pretty smug face he wanted to destroy. Ever since, all they do was squabble. That's Sasuke. The wind blew just the right amount on his direction. On the background, the students went out of their way and started whispering to each other as Naruto made his way to the classroom. I'm here, Naruto announced as he blasted the door open. The first class just ended, Naruto. You're quite early for the next. Kiba teased. Ha, exactly, Naruto said as he went to his seat and asked the pink-haired Sakura, who was seated few seats away from him and whom he noticed rolled her eyes at him, how are you, Sakura-chan? Oh, come on. Don't be too confident. You're late, Sakura answered. Will you date me if I go on time? Naruto teased and the pink-haired made a grossed-out sound. Both of them failed to notice their teacher's arrival. Get lost, the pink-haired responded, but she was quite puzzled when the blonde suddenly and aggressively stood up. Haven't you heard the class representative? Let's all stand up and greet the teacher. Naruto commanded everyone with such irritation, which made his classmates comply. He snuck a side glance at Hinata, their class representative. Somehow, just by looking at her, he could sense that she was troubled. She always had problems with getting the class attention. At some point, he was trying to attend the class despite his lack of motivation. He wanted to help her in his own little way. Just like right now, he knew their Aincho would have a problem again with encouraging everyone to greet their teacher. Good thing he made it in time. Hinata was always like that, soft-spoken, shy and often treated invisible. At first, Naruto thought she's pathetic, especially when they were younger. Until she was made their class representative. It was unbelievable for him, of course. Come on, Hinata, seriously. But he was wrong. Naruto could still remember that one afternoon. Hinata was at the school grounds hauling with her bunch of papers and stuff that she could barely carry herself. She looked helpless, yet she was patiently bearing it all. He knew he must help her as he couldn't take the picture of her suffering stupidly in his mind. Couldn't resist to help her. He hurried her way and started getting some of the things from her grasp. Naruto-kun, why, she muttered. Don't act tough. You can't carry all of these, he said as he looked at her again and saw how tired her eyes were and how beat she looked like. To him, she seemed nothing but a poor puppy. Thank you, she smiled at him. I don't get it. Why are you doing all of this? All this hard work. He was somehow annoyed and angry at her and couldn't help it. Why do this for the class when they... He stopped from talking and walking. She noticed it and turned around to face him. Her face was highlighted by the light of the dusk. Her eyes were kind and gentle and they showed no sign of tears. Don't care. Naruto could only gulp. He couldn't even face her. He was guilty. There were hundreds of times wherein he ignored her efforts and position in class. Hinata went near him and retrieved the other class paraphernalia from his hand. I know no one would care. I know no one would really notice, but I'm fine with it. I mean, I'm okay with it. It's always like that, Naruto-kun. She looked at him and her smile was sincere, only telling what's real. I do this because this is the only way I could feel that I actually have a purpose, that I actually have a meaning. The rustle of leaves cut across them and that's all Naruto could hear. At that moment, times when the class would treat Hinata as if she was just a mere bubble appeared before his eyes, moments on how much she struggled on getting everyone to listen, moments when she's trying to be heard. He was treated like a thin air. His stomach rolled from the inside. The vulnerability in her eyes made him weak to the knees. She deserved to be the class rep, but did they even deserve her? Starting from that day, Naruto made a decision. Respect. Hinata gained his respect and no other people in Konoha had ever done so far. Seeing her work hard without being acknowledged, she reminded him of someone. She reminded him of himself and how alike they were on their resolve. If that's the case, he'd also help her while enduring their boring school. He'd be honest that he always made attempts to get expelled from Konoha Gakuen. He didn't really see the point of studying. He thought that he was just wasting his time. However, if he'd only cause trouble for the Ainsho, he'd try to minimize his mischief as much as possible. A heavy exhale escaped from him as another boring day went by. Naruto spent the other subjects sleeping at the rooftop as he wasn't in the mood to skip school. Of course, he was present during their P.E. class. It's his favorite subject anyway. Naruto picked up the mats and placed them on the storage. As per usual, their classmates left without helping. Oh, and Naruto-kun. Why are you still here? Is that even a question, Ainsho? He answered while picking up the jumping ropes. Walking towards the shelf, he noticed class rep's shoulders slumped. Hey, don't sweat it, okay? I always help you. What's the prob? Well, she raised her head and looked at him faintly as she rolled an agility ladder. That's kind of the point. I seem to be bothering you. Oh, gee, I like helping you, Ainsho, so no worries. He replied as he rubbed the back of his head. Thank you, she softly said. They stood in front of each other amidst the quietness and they remained still for quite a while. Hinata was staring at the space between Naruto's feet, while Naruto was, well, he was still grinning. I guess, she started to voice out, breaking Naruto's trance, making him chuckle. Oh, it's sundown. I must be going. See you around, Ainsho. With that, Naruto left in a hurry. Oh yeah, at the grounds. I'm sorry about that, Ainsho. Naruto said as he hurriedly ran after the exit. I better go. Naruto just helped the class representative collect the seatwork the teachers tasked her to collate. All the students were called to gather at the grounds. He didn't know the reason for this, but he didn't want their class representative to get into trouble, so perhaps he'd just cut once he gets there. For him, this was another horrible school day. He missed the morning class though, as he didn't wake up when his alarm rang. On his way from escaping the assembly at the grounds, he came across Kiba, who was about to do the same. Whoa, Naruto. How about we go to the storage? Shish. Fine. The blonde one hissed. But keep low, Kiba. So do you have with you the magazine I lent you earlier? No, why, you're so up. Kiba teased with a mischievous chuckle. What the hell are you talking about? Naruto asked, berated. The council together with the class reps will do spot check today, the Inuzuka informed and added, surprise inspection. Naruto's eyes widened. Holy shit. With lightning speed, he bolted back to the classroom. No, he wasn't afraid that Neji might discover him. He had an agreement back then with the dude, and that's probably a story for another time. Kiba mentioned that even the class representative would inspect. What would their class representative think if she saw that magazine inside his bag? Shit. He didn't know why he was feeling nervous that their Ainsho might find out. But it's not just a normal scenario. It's Hinata. There's just a few people he respected in his life and she's one of those, and somehow he didn't want to lose the little respect she had for him. Nearing the hallway, He hid at a corner once he saw Neji and his council mates exited their classroom. He sighed in relief as soon as they were gone. Naruto immediately proceeded inside their room, bumping a chair in his haste. He met her gaze and she was paler than her normal pale. He was doomed. His eyes widened and were nervously trailing down to where her grip on the porn magazine he borrowed from Kiba. Her hands shook and a page fell on the floor and there it went as he heard her gasped. An image of a woman with a lewd face and her legs spread wide leaving nothing behind. Naruto jumped in panic and grabbed the page, while nervously trying to explain everything. That's. The voices of their classmates started emerging and they both made their way to their own seats. Naruto just sat uncharacteristically quiet. This was probably the moment in your life wherein you realized that you were screwed. Out of so many days, why now? Had he been not excited from borrowing that filthy magazine from Kiba, he would not be in this scenario. Out of many people, why her? The class representative was one of the few good-natured and kind people he knew. It was also apparent that, unlike other girls, she was far more innocent. How could he corrupt her eyes with such picture? Stealthily, he stole a glance at her as she was red and pale at the same time. She looked all sorts of perplexed as she placed the magazine in her bag. How could he let her touch such filthy material? At that moment, he felt nothing but a shameful pervert. Damn, if Neji would find out about this, he had no reason to fight back. This was completely his fault. Yes, he might have fought with gangs here and there, but he had utmost respect for women. He's not that kind of man. And it was as if the universe was punishing him personally. Their principal, old lady Tsunade, came. The class greeted her, but he refrained from standing, he was too preoccupied. I specifically came here to announce something special for you, Naruto. Oh great. Naruto just looked at her with bratty contempt. I have a new program for you. What again, Obaa-chan? Too excited, huh? Their blonde principal smiled. You're going to have a remedial aid. Ha, I don't need remedial aid, old lady. So enough with any of your programs. Besides, how sure are you that the remedial aid will do his part, huh? I could just scare him away. Well, let's say she'll get a deduction if you fail a subject. Tsunade crossed her arms across. And I'm sure she has a strong sense of integrity. Naruto scoffed mockingly. Like there's someone here who wants to teach me. You'll be Naruto's remedial aid, right, Hinata? Hinata raised her head looking as if her attention was just caught and muttered, yes, Tsunade-sensei. Ha, that's a yes. Their principal rejoiced. The class gasped and looked at Hinata with disbelieving eyes. That's not even a proper yes. Naruto protested and his anger was visible, but he was hesitating. He wanted her to make her own decisions. He's not the one to decide for her. He paused for a while and pulled himself to look at Hinata. Are you even sure, Aincho? I don't, she mumbled as if confused. You're going to merit a deduction if Naruto would, someone worriedly whispered. You do care about Naruto, right, Hinata? Tsunade old lady asked. I mean, as the class rep, you are concerned, aren't you? Why yes. I guess, that's a proper yes, for you. Their principal said and informed. So it's settled then, Hinata's going to be Naruto's personal remedial aid. That's not fair. Naruto stood up with his fist balled up. She said yes, brat. You all guys are dismissed. You may now go home and pack your bags. Tsunade quipped, ignoring Naruto. Oh, by the way, Naruto and Hinata, you start today. Some of their classmates packed up and went home, but Naruto remained frozen. He couldn't believe what just happened. Truly, he couldn't scare class representative away for him to escape this scenario. Perhaps, he could beg her. That's right, he could beg her to quit. But that might not look good on her and too selfish on his part. He went outside their classroom and the rumors spread fast. Soon, it was as if the whole batch knew their circumstance. Class representative went outside the room and he called out on her. He'd better be honest. The chances of him failing a subject and causing her a deduction was 100%, that's despite him not being good with numbers. Hey, Iancho, let's talk about your decision. Have you heard? A small voice was heard in the background. Yeah, followed by another one. I don't think they'll make it. That Hyuga girl can't even make it to the number 1 spot. Aha, he can't pass a subject except P.E. And she can't even level with her cousin. Naruto didn't know why, but there's something inside his head that snapped when he heard them. What? Huh? What are you talking about? Naruto called on them. The class representative is an amazing person. So don't you dare. Nah, Naruto-kun. Her soft voice cut across them as she tugged on his sleeve. Everybody gathered in the hallway and watched the commotion that's happening. Everyone got their eyes on the angry blonde and the troubled girl. Some were whispering things to each other while others were watching intently. Naruto knew they were all wrong about him, but the class representative was another story. She didn't deserve this bad mouthing. Her kind heart didn't deserve this treatment. He was about to say something again, but he felt something on his arm. Naruto-kun, please, she asked, her voice and eyes pleading while the grip on his sleeve tightening. I heard that she was a disappointment in her family. That's it. He couldn't take this any longer and he's going to prove them wrong. Dead wrong. Enough. Just so you wait and see. Naruto slammed his hand on the bulletin board hard enough to make Hinata jump a little. With Iancho's help, my name's gonna make it to this list. Choji's chip dropped from his mouth. Sakura and Ino's eyes almost got out of their sockets and Sasuke suddenly listened carefully. Everyone, just everyone was in shock and their mouths hung open. Naruto-kun, Hinata said like she was running out of breath and was about to fade anytime soon. With firm resolve, Naruto hoisted his fist. I'm gonna make it to the batch's top 20. There's a time in your life when you realize that you have done something irrevocable and cannot be taken back anymore, when the people's eyes were in their widest state as they could have been, the smirk of that one person whose very existence insulted your own and you're put in line the reputation of the kindest person you knew. That moment was when you realized that you should run. As fast as you can. Probably, take that person whom you dragged into this mess with you as well. Top 20. Seriously, Naruto knew what he did was beyond stupid and he probably won't be able to take his words back again. If there's one thing Uzumaki Naruto wouldn't do, that would be swallowing his own words and breaking his promises. But how the hell would he keep with that? Who was he kidding? He didn't even know how many subjects he was passing. All he knew was he was failing all of them. Now, he even placed the class rep in a bad position. A very bad one. Neither surrendering nor failing was an option. Both of those would just affect them in a troublesome way, especially Iancho. She would be at the harsher side of criticisms and it's all his fault for running his mouth without coordinating with his brain first. However, what he did felt oddly right deep inside. He had been receiving insults after insults every day and it's not that he had already accepted that fate. It's just that he didn't bother. Yes, he was loud-mouthed, rough and troublesome at the surface, that's why it was easy for people to judge him. But he knew who really was and he had nothing to change. He was perfect in his own way and it's Konoha Prefecture that needed change. But the class representative was a different thing. What they're throwing at her was even more. She did nothing wrong to be talked about that way and most importantly he believed that she was being treated unfairly all this time. Although he didn't have a family, he could only imagine how difficult things would be for the class rep, if that she was experiencing troubles both at home and at school. He spun his head slightly to look at the delicate girl who was running behind him. Noticing that she was running out of breath, he stopped at the nearby drinking fountain and giggled. Hinata was breathing deeply. She didn't know why there was a need for them to run, but Naruto-kun just called her out to follow him a while ago and dashed away from the crowd. Perhaps, he sensed that she was disturbed at their rather humiliating situation. Without a word, She hurried herself to the drinking fountain. The water running through her throat and that coldness that reached her chest made her feel relief in an instant. Thinking of it, how can they relieve themselves of this situation? Clearly, she couldn't force studying to Naruto-kun if he didn't want to. Most importantly, getting to the top 20 out of a whim was such an impulsive decision. She wasn't sure if she could really help him carry it out. She was not as bright as Sakura-chan and Ino-chan to impart something near perfect to Naruto-kun. Maybe, she can open this up to Naruto-kun and she'll gladly take the blame for everything. Belonging in a family that's filled with controversies, she knew this kind of situation well. They might have been the talk of everybody for now, but it would soon dwindle down once they stop this. Unlike when they still continue this thing, everybody would tune into their lives like a television series. She'd be honest, she really felt discomfort whenever people's eyes are on her. Once they stop this, she would be able to return to her normal life as well. She would be able to become invisible again just like every day and avoid everyone's attention just like before and just like how she preferred her life to be. Are you okay, Incho? Sorry, I think I ran too fast. Daintily, she picked up her handkerchief from her pocket, wiped the moist off her lips and nodded in response. No worries, Naruto-kun. He retracted himself from leaning at the wall, while watching with a slight worry on his face as Hinata prepared herself to confront him about their situation. This might not look easy, but, she took a deep inhale. Nah. So I guess, temporarily, we better study at somewhere less crowded. Huh? She asked, shocked and questioning. The blonde quirked an eyebrow and returned, what? Don't we begin today, Incho? But Naruto-kun, I mean. Naruto-kun grabbed her wrist and her mind went completely blank while her face turned red as he gently dragged her going to the library. She completely forgot about the intrigued gazes of their schoolmates, whom they passed by along the way, and there's only that strong beating of her heart echoing in her ears. They stopped at the library's doors and Naruto reached out for the handle with an ear-to-ear grin, however Hinata stopped him by lightly tapping his hand. Naruto-kun, she called out and he looked at her querulously. Hesitation was very apparent in her eyes. I mean, there's still time, I can still talk to Tsunade-sensei. What do you mean? I'll take everything, Naruto-kun. We don't have to do this. Naruto was baffled for a while. At first, he thought that he'd be the one to coax whoever his remedial aid would be to quit, but now he never thought that it would come from, especially from Incho. She didn't want to teach him too. That made him feel really upset. You didn't wanna, as well, I get it. And no, it's not like that, Naruto-kun. It's just that, I know that Naruto-kun doesn't want this. He clasped her shoulders and firmly said, Incho, what are you talking about? Come on. After what they said to you and after they belittled you, we can't back out now. We must show them that we can really do this. That I can really make it, with your help. Hinata avoided his gaze, shame crawling up her spine. But Naruto-kun, I'm not really sure if. I believe in you, he said to her and returned to his eyes. I always do, Incho. His ever-bright grin made her smile somehow, and that gave him a little bit of relief. There. Finally, he opened the door and they entered the silent library. The academy's library was huge. It had a reading area in the middle while the shelves were aligned at the corners, and the facility also had a second level. For a high school, their academy was pretty privileged. They sat opposite each other at reading table. Naruto rested his chin on his hand as he looked at Hinata with waiting eyes. What subject do we do today, Incho? I guess we start with, Hinata gulped. There's something really wrong about his. Maybe with the subjects you're really found to be the most difficult for you. He pouted and tapped his chin twice, appearing as though he was thinking. Then, he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. What if I find everything difficult? Hinata loosened up and giggled a little. Fine, then. We'll begin with the basics of everything. Everything. Naruto whispered loudly in shock, which made her giggle again, but wary of the librarian this time. Naruto-kun, she whispered. I couldn't teach you if I still don't know your capacity yet. Do you still have your papers with you? He punched a fist into his palm and beamed. Opening his bag, his face fell, actually. They looked at each other blankly, not knowing how to start. Seriously, Hinata couldn't even manage how to be a class representative, then she was held responsible for the fate of a failing student's grade. This was really a bad idea. Naruto-kun, she started, a worried frown falling on her face. I don't think this is going to work. He let out a deep exhale in frustration. Aincho, what are you talking about? I don't get any of this. I mean, I really want to help you, but there's something. What? Naruto asked aggressively, but not angrily. This caught the attention of the librarian, who was now approaching the two of them. Hurriedly, Naruto stood up and signaled Hinata to follow him quietly. He searched for the best spot to study. His first instinct was off to the very corner part until they reached the dead end beside the window. No one usually circled that part, for who knew what kind of books were shelved in there. He didn't know if this area would help him grasp more learning, he just felt like this was the perfect spot. Aisle 6, Archives, he heard Aincho murmured, which made him turn his head. I mean, this is where they keep historical materials and such, or maybe store files from the past. Naruto against the corner of a shelf and wall. You do know a lot of thing, huh, Aincho? No, it's not like that, it's. Gee, he grinned. I guess this one's a great spot. The sunlight here's pretty good. She nodded and sat across him. Silence. Naruto snuck a glance at the class representative. Her face was serious and pondering. Hinata just had her eyes glued at the titles on the shelves. So, what do you usually do during this time? He asked. She started and answered. I usually do my homeworks. It's the schedule. I don't do homeworks, he said, turning his head at her. Feeling his gaze at her, she shyly fiddled her fingers. I guess we can start by them together from now on. He grinned and shrugged his shoulders. I don't know. I mean, you're my remedial aide, you know. She just laughed, softly. But she still didn't seem to do anything to teach him. In what subject do we have homework? Math, she answered, looking back at him, interested to see his reaction. She's out of all, he said, while opening his bag, then pulled out a notebook and a pencil. Let's go. His initiative made her smile and gave her spirit. She got her own stuff as well and started assessing the problems. She told him detail by detail on how to do the algebraic expressions. It wasn't easy, as Naruto-kun was not yet familiar of the basics, but she noticed that he was learning and was trying to learn. They tried answering the equations and it seemed that he just needed some tremendous amount of practice, which she was patient enough to provide. Yes. Naruto rejoiced in a whisper as he finally got 3 correct answers. Hinata just smiled at their little victory. Yeah, we can totally prove them wrong. Her smile turned bittersweet. Hinata came in aisle 6, catching her breath. Her bags were hanging loosely on both of her shoulders as she sat on the floor. The boys and girls had separate classes, while she came from their gymnasium and was about to meet Naruto-kun at this spot as they agreed upon. Aincho. Naruto-kun called out as soon as he arrived. You look tired, what happened? It's nothing, she answered. He took notice of the stack of papers inside her light pink tote bag. She remembered that tote bag so well. That's where she put all her class representative stuff. He just grinned at her to ease away her exhaustion. What's in store for me today, Aincho? She looked up at him and smiled. She believed that everyone had their own fates, but in their reality and present world, education was a privilege every child must treasure. She just didn't want Naruto-kun to miss out on such an opportunity, but she also couldn't force him to. That's why seeing Naruto-kun motivated to study like this was making her feel happy. Ha, I could have passed that math homework if it wasn't for the seventh question. Naruto reasoned out as he was illegally munching chips that he hid inside his bag. Hinata giggled and kept her stuff inside her bag. I hope I really helped. I passed that science homework we did the other day. Cheer up, Incho. It's working. He smiled at her and reached out for her hand. She blushed. We're working. He opened her hand, placed several chips atop and grinned. Hinata would be honest. There were nights through this week when she couldn't just sleep through this arrangement. She knew what's bothering her, but she kept on thinking on the positive side of everything. Naruto-kun was motivated to study. Or, at least, he was now doing his homeworks, but he was still relying on her lessons and missing the classes. With pinched eyebrows, Naruto was grilling hard on his worksheets. Recently, he'd been getting the drift out of these assignments and all, but this one was different. He was somehow giving them extra effort. Those students at the hallway earlier, who do they think they are? Do you think that the idiot would listen to her? The Hyuga girl. Oh, I've heard that the class can't even hear her. They can't even see her. Shit. How could some people just spew off hate and bad things against others just like that? How could they do that without even thinking? They didn't even know the class representative to talk against her like that. What did she even do to them? She wasn't living for their own entertainment. He had enough of this. The Iancho was only one of the few kind people he knew of, that's why he can never let them talk down to her like that, especially when he's seeing parts of himself in her. The parts the world was overlooking. Naruto-kun, he felt her soft hand on his as she touched his hand. Her cheeks were red as always. His eyes darted towards the pencil he just broke and he let out a frustrated sigh. Getting so overwhelmed like this won't get them any far. I'm sorry about that, he must not get carried away. The lessons were still very hard to digest, and he still wasn't getting the reason out of all of this, but their voice echoing in his head, we have to do this, Incho. We have to show them that we got this, right? Hinata lingered on his eyes and all she saw was his bright innocence, just like a lost boy seeking to find a way back home, and that's when she knew that the wrongness she was feeling all along was right. All she could give him was a tentative smile. Naruto's doing well, I've heard. She looked back and saw her Neji ni-san standing and leaning at their veranda's door. Yeah. You don't look so happy. She just looked at the faraway sky, not knowing how to respond. How could she say this? She's at odds. I can still remember I almost made father proud. She said with reminiscent voice. He said that I always keep things in order and I'm good at adhering to things, and that would somehow make me a good lawyer, perhaps, someone like him and the rest of the family. Neji just listened to her, trying to let her words sink in. At that moment, I felt like I made him feel happy and that made me feel the same too. She stood up. However, that happiness alone is not enough to complete me, and I ended up living without my own. What I'm doing with Naruto-kun, I feel like I'm no different than my father. Hinata went past Neji as she decided to head down to her own bedroom. Hinata. She turned back at him. You've always been the different one in the family. You know that, right? He told her with sincerity. And that's what makes you better. Neji smiled at her and finally sealed her resolve. Oh, I guess I'll just help you with this stuff. Naruto-kun said as he volunteered to carry her pink tote bag for her. They just finished with their assignments for today and she would admit that she did advance notes to give to Naruto-kun for a reason. He always bid farewell before sundown and this would be the first time they'd be trailing the streets together. As much as she was happy tutoring him for the past couple of weeks, there had been nights where this arrangement was harsh for her. But she knew she must do this. Because she wasn't doing this for herself in the first place, but for Naruto-kun. However, it appeared like this matter meant differently for them. Naruto-kun, she called out, faintly, it might seem odd, but she had to be frank. Why? Why are you still doing this? Why do you agree to study with me after all this time? Naruto just giggled. Come on, Incho. Haven't I told ya? I want to prove them wrong, especially about you. That you can do this. That you can help me. That we're both. I understand. But I don't care about what they say, Naruto-kun. I think we should better stop this. Naruto's eyes widened. Why all of a sudden? Are you serious? He said, almost disbelievingly. She just nodded her head. Why? Hinata was trying to avoid this question, but his eyes were seeking for answers. You really find it hard. I am really that unber-abl. Naruto-kun, didn't you say that you're going to convince her, or give your remedial aid a hard time until she surrenders? It just means that you really don't like this from the start, don't you? Yeah, but, he said and affirmed. It's different now, Incho. What made now different, Naruto-kun? She asked with gentleness in her eyes. Incho, we've been starting for like, more than 2 weeks. What happened? I don't understand. I really wanted this. I really want to show them that we can do it. That you can do it. That they underestimated you. Me. That's the reason why. She said as she instantly wiped a feeble tear that fell across her cheek. Seeing you work hard and study well really makes me happy, Naruto-kun. But I cannot afford that you're only doing it because of me. I cannot be the one to drive decisions for your life. Reluctantly, she took her bag from him, which he weakly let her do so. Hinata really enjoyed being close with Naruto-kun, and after what she did today, he might despise her for the rest of his life. There's not a time in class when I don't wonder when you are going to be present, because I am really concerned, I really cared about you. But I know that we all have our own choices in which paths to take. A choice that won't probably be hers. That's why, I won't be taking that choice from you, Naruto-kun. And if you study hard, I believe, you should do it because of yourself, not because of what others think, nor because of my reputation. Naruto didn't know, but there's something about what the class representative said that hit home. She said goodbye with a bittersweet smile on her face, a smile which only meant the end. With unwavering spirit, he ran as fast as he can on his way to the library. Ever since the Incho agreed to tutor him, Naruto had another thing to look forward to every after class. It was not really an exciting thing at all, as he really didn't love studying for many reasons. However, his competitiveness was the one giving him motivation. He arrived at aisle 6, the temporary spot he and the class representative chose as study area. Looking around, he saw no signs of her. The girls and boys had separate classes today, and it seemed that the class reps having an extension. Incho. Naruto called out as soon as he saw the class representative arrived. You look tired, what happened? His brows furrowed just by looking at her state. Her bags were hanging loosely on both of her shoulders as she sat on the floor. It's nothing, she answered. He took notice of the stack of papers inside her light pink tote bag. She remembered that tote bag so well. That's where she put all her class representative stuff. The thought that she kept doing a thankless job was something that bothering him all this time, but now's not that time for such sentiment. He just grinned at her to ease away her exhaustion. What's in store for me today, Incho? She just looked up at him, smiled and pulled out a notebook. We have a homework in science today, so maybe we should do that. The class representative started introducing him the basics for him to get the answer. Ironically, her soft and calming voice caught his attention more than the loudness of their teachers. Are you okay, Incho? He asked as he noticed her reddening face. She got flustered and fiddled with her fingers. Yes. Why yes. Yes. I'm okay. Naruto just shrugged. Maybe she was just still tired. He didn't know. Also, he didn't fail to recognize how she was avoiding looking at his face. He seriously wanted to discuss things with her eye to eye, face to face, but she was very avoidant. He knew that she was a shy girl, but he really meant to ask her about this, because he just wanted the Incho feel comfortable around him. He just shook the thought away. Perhaps, she was just too focused into teaching him. The Hyuga girl. Oh, I've heard that the class can't even hear her. They can't even see her. How could some people just spew off hate and bad things against others just like that? How could they do that without even thinking? Naruto-kun, his attention was caught by her soft hand on his. Her cheeks were red as always. Suddenly, his eyes roamed towards the pencil he just broke and he let out a frustrated sigh. I'm sorry about that, he must not get carried away. The lessons were still very hard to digest, and he still wasn't getting the reason out of all of this, but their voice echoing in his head, we have to do this, Incho. We have to show them that we got this, right? This time, she finally looked him in the eyes. He searched hers for answers, but she just smiled at him sweetly. It had been a week since she began helping him. They didn't meet every day though, as the class representative had some family or org duties sometimes, while he was out playing baseball with his rival. Naruto sighed and put his pen and notebook down. Truly, it had been a week, but he knew that the class representative was still hesitant. He didn't know why, but he was doing his best to be her bright student. There were moments when she would be delighted, but he knew it wasn't as wholehearted as how she was sacrificing herself for their ingrate class. There's not a time in class when I don't wonder when you are going to be present, because I am really concerned, I really cared about you. But I know that we all have our own choices in which paths to take. I won't be taking that choice from you, Naruto-kun. And if you study hard, I believe, you should do it because of yourself, not because of what others think nor because of my reputation. The words the class representative told him were stuck on his head and he brought them everywhere even until he reached his dim and small apartment. He tossed his bag around and went for a quick bath. Who knew what time was it now? But he was sure that he needed a rest. He laid down and finally got a taste of his bed, until his alarm clock cried. Seriously. He peered towards the curtain of his window, noticing that it was dawn and time to get up. Usually, he would just ignore the time and take his much-needed sleep, but he knew that he couldn't afford to sleep after what happened. Forcing himself up while eliciting a grunt, he pondered on what Incho told him. She was right, but he wasn't wrong either. It wasn't just about what others think about her or about him. It was far more than that. In the first place, he didn't know the importance of studying since he didn't know what to do with it in the future. While others have dreams, he grew up with no family, so he had no concrete idea of what he should be dreaming of. There's no one to guide him, no one to tell him how's it like, no one to expect something from him. And with lack of anyone's expectations, hopes, and faith in him, he grew up with no dream about his future. No. All his life, he lived with people expecting him to be nothing, they were expecting him to fail. However, this time, he just wanted to know how it feels like to have someone expect something good from him. To believe in him. For the few days he spent studying with the class rep, he felt something really positive every time he'd get something right for some reasons he didn't know. Somehow, he wanted to know why and he wanted to keep doing so until he finally gets it. He just sorta wish Incho was expecting that they could do it together. And he'd do everything to convince her that they were both right. It's just that they have different perspectives on how life works. But to sum it all up, they were fighting for one and the same thing, and Naruto knew that. Well, somehow he felt like they were fighting for the same thing though, at least for him. He saw that part of himself in her. That's why they must get past through this. Together. Naruto-kun was not around for the first subject as usual. Was she harsh on him the last time they talked? Maybe. She went a little too far. But they needed to end this. However, at the back of her head, she was wishing that he'd enter and burst into the class as unexpected as he was, just to prove how willing he was to continue their tutoring. But just his absence right now just proved that she made the right decision. She felt sad at their too short and sudden separation. She was certain that she wasn't even comfortable yet around with Naruto-kun to say that they were close already or to even conclude that they already spent a lot of time with each other. She really wished to be near him, especially that now's their last year. But she didn't just let her chance slip, she even might have broken whatever good camaraderie they have. The class ended and she immediately stood up and headed to the principal's office. There were several murmurs that surrounded her, but she didn't bother understanding what those people were even saying. Shizune-san, good morning. Hinata greeted with a courteous bow. Is the principal free today? I wish to talk to her. The raven-haired girl fixed the pile of paper atop her desk and frowned at her. I'm sorry, Hinata, but Headmaster Tsunade is in Tokyo for a teachers' conference. What? Oh, is it urgent? Hinata gulped and waved her hands dismissively. No, it's not. Thank you, Shizune-san. Shizune bid her farewell, but she hurriedly went out of the office, troubled and confused to even digest it. Out of her mind, she went down the stairs, still thinking what's best to do. What would she do now? Would she still continue the lessons with Naruto-kun? But she just told him that they must stop yesterday. And after everything that she said to him, she didn't honestly know how to face him anymore. Out of the blue, a blue notebook stopped her in the face, which made her leap a little. Check it. I tried doing it alone, so you just have to teach me the parts one don't really get. In that way, it'll be a lot easy for you. She just looked at him quizzically. Naruto-kun. But I object, he said with fiery firmness. This time, he wasn't clueless or innocent. This time, he was sure and confident. It's true, that I don't like it whenever people belittle us, especially you, and I want to prove them wrong. What's so wrong with that? All she could do was look at him. Clearly, she found nothing wrong with it as well. It's just that, it's a different thing. But that's not the only reason why I'm doing this. I have other reasons too, He gently handed her his notebook, which she absent-mindedly accepted, her mind still processing his words. If you want to give me a chance, after class, meet me at the grounds. Naruto-kun, the old lady is in a conference for 2 weeks, so it means that you weren't able to quit yet. Naruto-kun pressed his palms together and pleaded. At the grounds later. Please, Naruto-kun, she dipped her head low and looked at his notebook. Her eyes wondering and still confused. I was just wishing that even though I'm not around, you'll still be able to. He tilted his head wearing a pondering expression on his face, but he soon grinned as if he finally got it. It's okay, Actually, I like it. No one really expects something good from me, you know. At least, there's someone who does. Flustered, Hinata muttered. Really? Yeah, you, Naruto-kun chuckled as he slid his hands into his pockets. You can actually expect me to pass that quiz, foe. I can't do such thing. Yes, you can. It's like setting a goal, His bright blue eyes glimmered, and he clasped her shoulders like his spirit had finally awakened. Yeah, we'll set a goal together. For ourselves. I don't really know how adultin stuff works, and I don't really know what I want to be aside from becoming gang leader, but, anyway, how about you? What's your goal, My goal. Her eyes wide as he asked her. Yes, your goal. Well, Hinata didn't know why, but her nape was heating up and she couldn't help but chew on her lips and fidget with her fingers. She was wondering why that question alone made her nervous and weak. My family wanted me to be a lawyer or a politician just like them. She immediately swallowed as soon as she spewed the words out of her gut. Oh, I see. Your family, so is that your goal too, She raised her head instantly and asked as if not hearing him. Is that your goal too? Her grip on her fingers tightened and she was feeling something strange on her chest this time. However, the bell rang like it was on time to save her. With frail voice, she tried to talk to him. Next class, Naruto-kun, I better go. Iancho. She hastily turned around, avoiding the blonde boy and leaving him puzzled. He mustn't see her like this. No one must see her like this. While going up the staircase, she noticed that her hands were shaking. Why was she feeling this way? She found comfort at her seat as soon as she reached their classroom. The soft breeze coming from the window gave her fresh air to breathe as she took in deep inhales and exhales to calm herself down. What did just happen? Their class started per usual and Hinata couldn't wrap her head to what occurred. She turned her head slightly to the right to see if Naruto-kun attended their class. He caught her gaze and gave her a small reassuring smile. She immediately hid her face behind her book. Admittedly, though, she was feeling the urge to sneak a glance at Naruto-kun, but she knew that he'd get her every time. Hinata immediately ran as soon as their teacher dismissed them, taking solace in solitude at the rooftop. Maybe the reason why Naruto-kun didn't see the point of studying was because he didn't know how's he going to use it in the future. Like, how's he going to apply it in his dreams? How about her? Her life looked like it's well figured out, but is that your goal too? She pondered on Naruto-kun's question as she stared at her bento. Come to think of it, all her life, she dedicated to adhering to their customs, to abide to their traditions. All her life, she was living up to the expectations of her family for her that she didn't know what's her own. Even her dream wasn't hers to begin with. It was her family's. Now, what did she have for herself? Looking back, she was feeling quite guilty. She told Naruto-kun that if he wanted to study it must not because of others. But look at her. How hypocritical, she thought to herself with a melancholic sigh. She was studying because that was what was expected of her as a Hyuga. At least, Naruto-kun knew how to fight for his own resolve unlike her. But things should better change now. Hinata had long accepted that she can never be just like any member of her family. She understood that she was different. And although she was resented because of that, she knew that it must not bring her down, at least. This was their last year of senior high and probably her last chance to make things right. Now, she had to make a decision that would change the rest of her year, and she already made up her mind. Walking along the corridor, she peered over the window and saw Naruto-kun waiting at the grounds. He was alone, sitting on the bleachers. She closed her eyes and took in a deep inhale. Hinata knew that this decision would drastically change her life, especially her status in school. She was sure that she would no longer enjoy the life of being invisible. Most importantly, she also acknowledged that she and Naruto-kun had different views in life, especially in studies. Most probably, because of their entirely polar upbringing. While Naruto-kun had no one's eyes on him, Hinata got everybody's eyes on her. However, this was the very first decision she'd make that's not her family's. This time, it's finally and entirely her own, and this could also be an opportunity for her to prove something to herself. Naruto-kun, she called out to him as soon as she neared his proximity at the grounds. His face immediately lit as bright as the setting sun behind him. Iancho, you're here. Thank goodness. So it means. She just nodded her head and gave a smile. It was a sure one this time. Well, we have to make this clear, Iancho. The blonde interjected firmly, while stretching his fist. We're in this fight. Together. No more quitting. In the end, it's all about figuring out what you really want for yourself. Your dream, your passion, your future. Her own fist met his, sealing a pact. No more quitting.